Crypto Show. We have Gavin Johnson with us today. Gavin's a founder at iRealise. He's a founder and advisor and a lawyer. This podcast is brought to you by bitbars.xyz. It's a client of mine, and they have a pretty cool NFT project. They're basically monetizing block space, and you can go check them out at bitbars.xyz. Gavin, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you've been up to as of late.
Sure. No, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation as well to be here. Super excited to talk to podcasters yourself and the wider audience. So, Gavin Johnson, founder of iRealise. So, iRealise is a real estate tokenization platform. We differ from other tokenization approaches in that we are tackling the underlying value in the real estate, which is the finance that sits in it, the capital stack, and we attack that directly. And our ultimate goal is to be able to open that up to any investor. So one of the hooks we use is what we call passion real estate. So if you have something you're particularly excited about, maybe you've got a favorite sports team. I don't know if you have a favorite sports team, but say they want to refurbish their stadium, build a new stadium. Well, you could go to the fans as the owner and say, do you want to own a piece of this? Now, how exciting is that to any sports fan, just for an example, to be involved with your club so closely and own a piece of the history and the club you love, the things you love, the sports you love to watch. And we are going to give that to everybody. We're going to open up that chance to everybody.
Yeah, and I think that should be the norm, right? I think it's Manchester United that gets criticized a lot, the ownership of it, and the players, they play for the fans, not really for the administration or the rich investor. And a lot of fans would like to have X coach or Y player on the team. So I think that only makes sense. The real question, a club is really expensive. So how close are we from that vision to happen?
Well, the way we approach at the moment was we tackle just, for example, the ownership of the stadium. So we're not fractionalizing it in the way that other real estate tokenization projects are trying to tackle that problem, principally because the law doesn't allow you to. So don't bother unless there's a change in the law. That's not going to work. But as a fact, you can get involved and you can take ownership in the sense of investing and believing in your club by taking a piece of the finance that sits behind it. And that's where the value really lies anyway. You invest in your club, they pay you some interest. Fantastic. So not only do you love this club, but they're paying you as well, rewarding you in a very tangible sense for that ongoing support. And it's also a way, as you rightly point out, that the players play for the fans. The fans are the ones cheering them on week in, week out through good times, bad times, horrible matches, horrible seasons, whatever it might be. And they're on that journey with them. And I think you're right. Certainly the players, the sports players, whomever they are, whatever your sport is, that's where their connection lies. And I think they understand that quite deeply. And that's rewarding for them to see, oh, hold on, there's these X million people, they believe in me and my teammates. I'm going to work harder for them. And you see it as well, when the fans start cheering and singing and, they're really trying to lift their team. They're trying to do their part. And so playing on that passion, we can reward that, but we can reward it tangibly with meaningful value. And it's not just, and I appreciate that the top of the cast, you refer to NFTs, and that's super interesting. I'm really interested in NFTs myself, and that's part of the mechanisms we're going to adopt. But again, it means something. That NFT is that you are part of, it's a badge of honor. You are part of this journey with this club, and you believe in it. You've put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, and you're going to invest in your club. Now that's very meaningful. And the NFT is part of that reward mechanism. And that's really the hook. And I think that's where the key difference is. You can tokenize real estate, you can tokenize this, that, and the other, but so what? What does it matter? And this is why, and you alluded to it as well, that other projects have attempted to create NFTs around certain athletes and sports players. it's super interesting. I'm not fully aware of how they all work because they all have their own little mechanisms, but it's that kind of belief that people will buy into a team, will buy into an athlete, a player, somebody who they believe represents something that means something to them. And we're all like that. We're only human, and that's really what people should be rewarded for. It sounds a bit weird, but it's, well, no, that's what we are, because we're all, if you're a fan of a club, you're in it with them, you're in it together, and you should see that.
Yeah, and you're betting also on the outcome, right? So there's a financial outcome. So yeah, it only makes sense that this would happen one day. You've been a lawyer for most of your career. I believe one of your first company was, I have it here, Agenium.
Yeah.
Why did you transition from being a lawyer to being a founder in 2017?
Well, that was born out of a few different things. So around about that time, I began to kind of circle back to some of the things that I'd been interested in before. So a lot more technology, science, engineering. That's kind of my background anyway. And I'd come to the law later. And just to digress slightly, what I'd found is the law's not that dissimilar to those sorts of STEM subjects, because it's all about understanding a problem, applying a series of rules to build a solution or define an outcome or advice. Kind of all the same thing in my head. That probably says more about what's going on in my head than I should share. But that coming full circle, and what I found was I was beginning to enjoy a lot more the types of conversations with founders, and particularly in and around quite early in the blockchain sort of journey at that time, smart contracts, things were becoming much more interesting. There was a lot more interest in the sector. A lot of unfortunate ICOs and things like that, which don't really want to think about, because a lot of them were some terrible scams. People lost money. It's awful. And looking at it from a legal perspective, but also trying to build something better for everybody. That was the promise of blockchain and crypto more generally. And so being a lawyer, we always want to help. And we look at the problem and think, oh, hold on, this isn't right. There's something wrong here. Is it the law, or is it how these things are structured? And it feeds into a lot of other things. So the reason I started at Genium was to begin to have more direct involvement with startups and advising them more broadly. So one of the things startups very much lack is legal advice. Now, lawyers are expensive. I think we all understand that. But there are ways you can provide, maybe, let's say, informal advice, if I can put it like that, and help guide certainly those first few steps. Here's some things you want to think about as you go on your journey. And that's where Agenium was focused, is to try and resolve that. And even now, I'm still doing it now. Just in the last couple of weeks, I've been helping a founder through a few of the legal hoops early on in his journey, helping him build a financial model, helping do some pitch deck stuff and some like strategy advice. Is this the right? Is this what you're trying to articulate? Have I understood it? Have you sold it to me properly? And helping through some various other fun legal and tax stuff that always crops up, but paying back with the benefit of my own knowledge and expertise, but my own experiences as a founder as well. And that's where it comes from. I continue to do that now.
Right. And coming back to your actual company, iRealise, how do you make money out of this once the project gets funded? You get a share of the pie?
Well, very simply, the way it works is we provide the tools, the infrastructure to connect asset owners. So, the owner of the stadium or the owner of the whatever it is, and the fans or the supporters or whomever they are, the investors will be. And we allow them to connect directly, but they need infrastructure to do that. And this is one of the primary functions of blockchain and Bitcoin as it was. If you look at the white paper, it's all about direct payments, peer-to-peer payments at distance. So we're not in the same place. So I can't say, well, here's some cash, I'll take this thing. We've got to find a different way to do that. And Bitcoin solves that problem. But if you extrapolate that more broadly, it actually does a number of other things. And what blockchain is almost principally designed to do is network, connect multiple points, multiple nodes to whatever it may be. And that's how we look at it, is that actually that asset owner is a node in a sense, and we can connect that person, that asset, to everybody else connected to the network. And with some very careful regulation through smart contracts and ecosystem features, we can connect them and allow them that direct investment. So they almost have a direct relationship, or they do have a direct relationship with whoever the asset owner is. So you mentioned Manchester United. So maybe Sir Jim wants to build a new stadium. Well, he can directly go to the fans and say, would you like to invest in this? And if he can raise, I think there's something like 50 million Manchester United fans worldwide. They put in, well, they don't even need £100. They just put in, £10 each, and there's £500 million. Put in more, and it's £5 billion, and you're not just building one stadium. You're probably going to build 2.5, maybe 3 stadiums. And that's the power of that crowd suddenly multiplied. But you can't do that without technology. It's not practical. It's not feasible. It's not economic. So that's what we do. We provide that bridge, if you will, between the single and the many.
Right, because starting at Kickstarter or GoFundMe or whatever platform wouldn't be feasible. You mean like from the fees that they charge, and also how do they get actual ownership of the stadium? Is it the real estate investors that build this stadium that get paid in the end?
So there's a few things. A lot of the challenges in this sector are principally legal ones. So they don't take direct ownership. Because you can't. It's not legally possible for 50 million fans to own a football stadium. But it is possible to have almost a crowd-funded loan if you've got the technology and the price point sufficiently low and the cost sufficiently low to allow those 50 million people to make an investment at a reasonable price point. And that's the other challenge, is a lot of investments tend to be quite exclusive. You want to invest in a real estate fund, you may have to commit $100,000, pounds, or whatever. And who's got 100,000 whatever just sat around waiting to go? Even if it's called over a number of years, it's a lot of money for a lot of people. So you've got to make it accessible. You've got to get that price point down. How you do that is you've got to remove the excessive costs. And that's twofold. One is you make it accessible at a lower price point, but also you put pressure on financial institutions, as they are, who are probably overcharging. I'd say that carefully. I think they are overcharging for the services they provide, and they kind of get away with it because there's only so many places you can go if you want tens of millions of pounds or dollars or whatever to do your project. There's only so many banks around the world that are going to be able to say, yeah, okay, we can probably name some, Goldman and I don't know, pick, JP Morgan, all these kind of things, massive banks with a lot of resources. But if you can get the right technology out there, you can connect all of these people, and suddenly those 50 million supporters, they're their own bank. They don't need that intermediate step, and they can directly connect. And the way, coming back to your earlier question, the way we make revenue on all of that is transaction fees principally, but at a very low margin. And we're still working to identify where that margin is, because there's a lot of costs that feed into that. It's a bit crude, but it comes down to electricity, price of electricity, things like that. Like similarly to Bitcoin mining, the efficiency of Bitcoin mining comes down to how much does the electricity cost to run your mining apparatus. And we're trying to get that as low as we possibly can, so we can get as many people as possible involved in the platform. But yeah, back to your question about ownership. They don't own, but they have an interest in the finance that sits in it.
Right. And what are the next steps for iRealise this year? What are your top goals as the founder?
Always a great question. What's the roadmap? And there's a few key steps. We're closing our pre-seed round. Hopefully that will be closed probably by the end of this month, maybe a little bit sooner. Then we've got a series of pretty big builds to complete. As you can probably appreciate, because it's fintech finance associated platform, there's a number of compliance requirements that we have to build in. It cannot be a free-for-all, because no regulator on the planet will allow that kind of free-for-all. I know there is a move, particularly in the US as well, beginning to loosen some of those regulations, but it's still a little way off. So compliance is a big issue. Then it's making sure that the self-service elements, because this is how we envisage it working, that an asset owner and investors, they can use it without too much of our intervention to facilitate it. We can build that infrastructure for them, and they can use it to their for their own needs. So there's a significant amount of build, and then in parallel to all of that, we'll be onboarding some early adopters, which is super exciting. In conversation with them now, putting together a test case. It sounds a bit silly. I think we all know that the technology works, and you and I know we can sit here and we can connect our wallets and we can merrily exchange tokens all day long, but it's got to work in a very specific context with the right smart contracts sat around it to regulate that activity. And we are going to run a test case with a real estate developer on a smallish project in association with a few sort of like core investors, just to demonstrate that the technology actually does work in the sense that we want it to work. Plus, we need to go through a testing cycle of, it does work, this is great, that's not quite right, get some more active user feedback on things like that. But I think, as you probably know, startups kind of live and die on user feedback. So we've got another cycle of that to go through to make sure we are getting it right in terms of, is it easy to use? Can you find what you're looking for? Can you use it to do the things that you want to do? So a lot of feedback elements we've got to go through together.
And once you are done with that first pilot project, like how will you outreach to one, customers / owners, and to investors? How do you get them to know about iRealise and hop on your platform?
No, another good question. So we have a development roadmap that caters to all of that. So we have relationships with a handful of real estate developer partners, and they will provide certain test cases for us, but also actual projects. And the way we have to approach it for sort of legal, financial, various other reasons is almost stepwise. So because it's a marketplace, we have to build both sides of the marketplace at the same time, which is kind of a weird challenge. So you need people, but you need them to be able to buy something. So you've got to grow both simultaneously. So that's what we're working on. And we have a number of connections with, I can't say, but with various, say, sporting venues. Let's leave it at that. And they all have their own real estate development projects and plans in the pipeline, and those will come along in the next few years. And at the same time as we prove our platform and build that network, they'll be able to come onto the platform and use that. So it's super exciting, and there's a lot of opportunities out there, and there's a lot of certainly the early conversations that we've had. There's a lot of excitement about being able to take control and not have to suffer excessive fees or inefficient practices. And as a legal background, unfortunately, lawyers, we can be a little bit hamstrung from time to time. Kind of inefficient, due diligence and things like this shouldn't take as long as it does, but it does for various reasons. And we're working to get rid of most of that. So trying to take all the pain. Eventually, we will take all the pain out of all of these processes, but step by step together.
And how do you split your time nowadays between that? I think you're still like practicing as a lawyer, you're a mentor, you're an advisor, and a venture scout. So how does that day-to-day in your life look like?
Yeah, it looks like a lot of different things. I think, like a lot of people now, I have what we maybe laughingly call a portfolio career, but it's all in pursuit of the same thing, and it's all to do with startups. It's all to do with technology. It's all to do with helping people. It's all to do with building better. So it's actually all part of the same process. And as founders, we're driven to help. We're driven to find a problem, solve the problem, or we're driven to look at the world as it is and think, oh, well, that's rubbish. Why is it like that? That makes no sense. We can do something better. And it's that sort of mix of visionary and frustration in how we look at the world. And certainly, I've been fortunate to have a lot of people help me certainly over the last couple of years as I've been looking at this particular iRealise as a particular problem and a solution. And I'm paying that on as part of my own mentoring and helping startups. But you got to remember, every interaction is a two-way street. I can be mentoring, for example, and we'll be in a conversation, and I'll have the realization, oh, hold on, there's something in that can help me as well. And so having all those conversations in all those different guises, we should be having more of them. Just like this podcast, same thing. Let's just have a chat, see how it goes, see what we're coming, because who knows where it'll lead. And we kind of miss.
Yeah. Do you think blockchain will be bigger than AI right now? The AI revolution is raging, and do you feel that blockchain will be as big?
I think that's a really good question. AI and blockchain, they kind of go hand in hand in many ways. Where I see blockchain is a foundational technology, and it's an important distinction. So blockchain is an underpinning to a lot of things that should be built on top of it, and it allows a certain amount of validation, authentication of data, and various other checks and things to be done, but also secure exchanges of value. And at its simplest, when you talk about blockchain, that's what you're talking about: is can we have a trustless, inverted commas, because it's not really like that, a trustless exchange of value between two people that have never met. Now, that's important, as we were talking about earlier. The Bitcoin white paper envisages that there's distance, there's no proximity between two persons, and they want to exchange value. So it facilitates that, which is important in a more global context. Regardless of whether or not you like globalization, it is happening and it's everywhere. Then contrast that with AI, and AI, where I think it will have the biggest impact is where it can help us, the individual people generally, in an everyday setting. I don't think some sort of generalist AI solution that just comes in and kind of does away with everything, entire swathes of workforce. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing or warranted or wanted. But where it can help and where it should help is certainly around productivity. And there's a big issue, certainly in the UK and generally in the Western world, about productivity. Can we do more, and can we do more with less? And with AI, you have that opportunity. And where it might begin to displace some workers, it will also create simultaneously new markets. And you see it with every new technology. Even .com boom, late 90s, early 2000s, suddenly there's this thing, the internet. But what does that create? It creates a whole swathe of new industries that now use this new technology and employ hundreds of thousands of people. Amazon wouldn't exist without the internet. What are you going to do? You're not going to have millions of people calling Amazon to say, "Can you send me this book?" No, you do it through the medium of technology, and that's kind of where AI, I think, should sit. It's definitely where blockchain will sit in a foundational sense, but that AI generally should also sit kind of in that space. It's supportive as opposed to replacing.
Yeah, let's see how that rolls out in the next couple of years. Gavin, where can people find out more about you?
Well, find out about me. Well, you can come to our website. So that's iRealise.io. Come and check us out. We're in the process of updating the website, but it is there. There's some information. You can also find me on LinkedIn and come and look me up. Come look myself up. There's a company page there as well if you want to check that out. Just links back to our website, really. So come and see it. Hopefully by the end of this month. You need to be careful because we're in a testing phase now, and it's who knows quite what will happen during the testing phase. we'll hopefully be able to release onto the web platform kind of a gamified version of what we're doing, so people will be able to come in and play with the technology and see what it does and understand a little bit more about it. One of the big things, just I know our time's up and we need to go, but one of the big things is education. So people understanding what it is we're trying to do and how we do it, and that's what we're getting to now. That's one of our next.
Love it. That was Gavin Johnson and